Morning, and today we are ending our lesson on law of agency. We have already learned about what agency is. We have talked about how agency is created. We have also looked at the principal, agent, and third party relationship. Today we are going to talk about termination of agency. Once the principal and then the agent form that agency relationship, when does it come to an end? Does it continue forever? The answer is no. The agency comes to an end by certain factors. When certain things happen, the agency relationship is terminated. In other words, is brought to an end. And once the agency relationship is brought to an end, it means that there are no obligations to be performed and there are no rights under the agency. So today, that is what we are looking at: termination of agency. When agency comes to an end. And one way by which agency relationship can come to an end is by what we call mutual agreement. Now, don't forget that I've already told you law of agency is an extension of law of contract. Law of contract, you learned the principles. And law of agency is also a contract, as I told you. But it's a special kind of contract where the principal and then the agent, they come into such a relationship in order to grant the agent the authority to represent him. And so you remember we talked about agreement under law of contract. And when you say mutual, then it means that both the principal and then the agent, remember, both of them formed the agency. They decided one day the principal decided that he wanted to engage an agent to represent him, to act on his behalf. Once the two of them form the agency, in the same way they form this agency, they can also bring the agency to an end. So they can also decide that whether the agent had performed his obligation or not, whether the principal had performed his obligation or not, the agency relationship can come to an end if both the agent or the principal and the agent decide that they are bringing the agency to an end. And once it comes to an end, then it means that there wouldn't be any obligation to be performed again. So that is one way agency relationship can come to an end, by mutual agreement. Another way agency relationship can come to an end is what we call by renunciation. By renunciation. And what do you mean by renunciation? The agent can decide to withdraw from the agency. He withdraws from the agency. He can decide to rescind that agency contract. He can decide to repudiate that agency contract. So if the agent thinks that he's no more interested in the agency relationship, he can decide to withdraw from the agency. And when the agent withdraws, then we say he has renounced. So check the pronunciation of the renunciation and check the pronunciation of renounce. This is how renounce is spelled. It's like pronunciation and pronounce. So this is the agent can renounce the contract. He said, I'm no more interested in the agency. I have discontinued with the agency, and therefore I'm no more going to perform my obligation. But what should be and he has the right to do that. What the principal can then do is that if he thinks that said renunciation breaches the agency contract, then he can sue the agent for whatever remedy available to him, as we learned under law of contract. So that is that. The third one, so note that renunciation is an act of the agent. When the agent withdraws, it is called renunciation. But what about the principal? Can he also withdraw? Yes, he can also withdraw from the agency. But when the principal withdraws from the agency, we say he has revoked. So that is what we call revocation. So another way agency relationship can come to an end is by revocation. And revocation is an act of the principal. In other words, when the agent withdraws, we say he has renounced. If the principal withdraws, we say he has revoked. So revocation is another way agency relationship can be terminated, and that is an act of the principal, whilst renunciation is an act of the agent. So that is another way agency can be terminated. Then another way agency relationship can also be terminated is by what we call operation of law. Operation of law. Look at this one. This is an act of the agent. Revocation is an act of the principal. But there are certain times the agency relationship comes to an end not by the act of any of the parties. That means the principal or the agent. But the law of the country, there have been laws that have been enacted, and the law says that if certain events occur, then the agency relationship automatically is terminated or is brought to an end. So when the law has been established and the law says that if so and so event occur, then the agency has been terminated. Then we say that if that event occurs, then the agency relationship has been terminated by operation of law. So operation of law is the termination of rights and obligations by the automatic effect of law. In other words, the rights and obligations have been terminated not by the act of the agent, not by the act of the principal, but by the operation of law. So the law says if this happens, the agency relationship has been terminated. So automatically, the rights and then the obligations are terminated by the operation of law. And we are going to learn about some of the events that might lead to the termination of agency by operation of law. And one of such events is what we call is death. When the principal dies, the agency has been terminated. When the agent dies, the agency relationship has been terminated. So that is number one. Number two, another event that may also lead to termination of agency by operation of law is permanent loss of the principal's contractual capacity. Now, in law of contract, we learned about contractual capacity. So here what we are saying is that if the principal loses his contractual capacity, For example, if he becomes insane, he has lost his contractual capacity. And once he has lost his contractual capacity, there are several ways. You have done it under law of contract, and you know when somebody can lose his or her contractual capacity. So once the principal loses his contractual capacity, then the agency has been terminated by operation of law. So that is that. Another event is bankruptcy. That is another event. Remember, we are still on operation of law. And we said operation of law is the automatic termination of the agency, automatic termination of rights, automatic termination of obligation, not by the act of the agent, not by the act of the principal, but laws have been enacted. And the law says that if the principal dies, the agency has terminated. If the agent dies, the agency has been terminated. When the principal loses his contractual capacity, his ability to enter into contract. Remember, the agent enters into contract on behalf of the principal. And so, if the principal loses his contractual capacity, it means that the agent cannot enter into contract on behalf of the principal. Don't say that. What about if the agent has contractual capacity? That in agency, the contractual capacity of the agent does not matter. It is the contractual capacity of the principal that is what matters. In other words, the agent may not have contractual capacity, but he can enter into agency relationship with a third party. But if the principal does not have contractual capacity, the agent who has contractual capacity cannot enter into contract with a third party on his behalf because he is acting on behalf of the principal. So this is a very important point that you should know, that in agency, the contractual capacity of the principal is what matters. The contractual capacity of the agent does not matter. So let us take note of that one. And bankruptcy is not a new term when you are talking about forms of business organization and companies. You learn about bankruptcy. When you say a business has been declared bankrupt, it means that they lack funds. So if you say that the principal is bankrupt, it means that he lacks funds. He doesn't have money to be paying debt, to be doing all that he's supposed to do. Once a court of competent jurisdiction has declared the principal as bankrupt, then the agency relationship has been brought to an end and they cannot continue with it. So that is another event. Then the last event that I would want us to consider under operation of law is war. Now, if the agent is a Ghanaian and the principal is a Nigerian, or vice versa, the principal is a Ghanaian and then the agent, no, let us not even look at that one. Let's look at the agent and then the third party, because it is possible that the principal and the agent may be in the same country. But let's say the principal and then the agent, they are Ghanaians. But the third party that the agent entered into a contract with is a Nigerian. And there is war between Ghana and Nigeria. That means that the agent has become an enemy to the third party's country. And therefore, once he has become an enemy, then it cannot enter into a contract. And therefore, the agency relationship will be brought to an end. So war ordinarily will bring agency relationship to an end. So that is also another way agency relationship can come to an end. Let me tell you here that for exams purpose, when they ask you to state and explain, let's say 5 reasons by which agency relationship may be terminated, you can talk about mutual agreement, you talk about renunciation, you talk about revocation. Somebody can decide to talk about the broad heading operation of law, and then you explain what is operation of law and give examples to that effect. Another person may decide that he will not go by that way. He may pick only one of them. For example, somebody may say the 4th point is death. and the person explains, it will be marked against operation of law. But remember that if you wrote that and you come and write any of these factors, they will not be marked because they will all fall under operation of law. So either you decide to go by that way, you talk about operation of law, you define what operation of law is, then you give example to that effect, or you pick one of these. And usually the common one that students pick is debt. It's very easy to explain it. You just tell the examiner that debt, and then you say that when the principal dies or the agent dies, then agency relationship is brought to an end. So that is how you can tackle that one. So let's move to the fifth point. Now, all the points we are going to learn now, we learned them under law of contract. So, agency relationship can also be terminated by breach of agency. And I don't need to explain you know what is meant by breach. So if I say breach of agency, remember we have learned about breach of contract and we've learned about breach of condition. So under breach of agency, that means that whether the principal or the agent decide not to perform his obligation under the contract, he breaches it. And once he breaches it, the other one can also refuse to perform his obligation under the contract. If he thinks that the breach had made him lose anything, then he can sue, whether the agent or the principal. So breach of agency can also lead to termination of the agency. Then another way which we also learned under law of contract is frustration. So frustration can also lead to termination of agency. Frustration. Now, when you say frustration, remember under law of contract, we said that frustration is any event that renders the performance of the contract impossible. So, if the principal and the agent had entered into agency relationship and then, as a result of something, that will make it impossible for any of the parties to perform the obligation under the agency, then the agency is terminated by frustration. So that is for that one. Then another one is by performance. When the agent and the principal have completed whatever obligation they have entered into the agency relationship to execute, then the agency relationship will be terminated. They have completed the task. The agent has done whatever he needed to do. The principal has also done whatever he needed to do under the agency contract. Once that one happened, then it means that the agency relationship has been terminated by performance. So if for example, the principal asked the agent who is maybe an estate agent to get him a 3-room apartment, and then you pay him a commission of 10%. After getting him the 3-room apartment and paying him the 10% commission, the agency relationship has been terminated by performance. So that is also that one. And today we are ending termination of agency by another thing that we also learn under law of contract: expiration of time. Expiration of time. If the two of them agree that the agency ends on a certain date, that means when the date comes or when the time comes, when the time expires, then the agency relationship has been terminated. So that is that. So today we looked at earlier we have talked about principal agent third party relationship. Then we ended it with termination of agency. And then we have talked about mutual agreement, renunciation, revocation, operation of law. We have also talked about breach of agency, frustration, performance, and then expiration of time. That brings us to the end of our lessons. This is the lesson 5 on law of agency. Our next topic will be risk management, where we are going to talk about insurance. Take this question and practice it. 1. Agency is triangular. Discuss. Question 2. State and explain any 5 ways by which agency relationship can be terminated. Question 3. Identify and explain 4 ways by which agency may be created. And that brings us to the end of law of agency. Have a very nice day. Thank you.